Elimination of a picture and its subject, called the feller's masterstroke, by Richard Dodd, 1865. 12:30, that's 6, 'tis more perhaps, exact that's gone before, behoves not here to say, how many years away, have welled up and flowed on, slow passing till they're gone. But some such time has fled, since regular business led to where a canvas glowed with phase, a leafy node encircling wild about. Their differences they let out about an Indian boy, whom for a toy, to while the time or teach to mime, or verse and fairy tricks. A mighty king his eyes did fix upon his covetous regard, when met upon the sward, near Athens' learned seat, his queen had set her feet, thrice happy green, business led, an official person to this sight, who with the picture pleased, as 'twere a jewel bright, his mind of burden eased. To have the like of which did strike at fancy's shrine well meant. If 'twas not so, then I may say 'twas this perhaps, that west away. Some friend he had who wrote in verse about the fairies, sense as terse as poets jam into a measured line, and give such extra value, I opine. To Heliconian jets so of his rhymes possessed, he wished to see a little sketch, slight as may be, to illustrate the same, some stanzas shewed as game, or point from which to throw. Sees nothing clearly, as his has blackly impositive, and soon makes it as clear as sunny noon, that he has not, waiting this heavenly gift, I thought on naught. A shift as good perhaps as thinking hard, fancy was not to be evoked from her ethereal realms, or if so, then her purpose cloaked in nuzzling the cloth, on which the cloudy shades not rich, indefinite, almost unseen, lay vacant entities of chance, lent forms unto my careless glance, without intent, pure fancy, 'tis I mean, design and composition thus, now minus, and just here perhaps, plus, grew in this way, and so, or thus, that fairly wrought they stand in view, a fairy band, much as I say, just so 'tis true. Part from the shades designed, part of vain fancy all inclined, a common end to gain, of nothing something still, to stand before the sight to fill. Something we have, having, we yet have not. Be it so or nay, why care to jot? But there they are, and now they stand a theme, a field to plow, and silent reap what any choose, judiciously or not to lose. All the significance may give, they surely think in this doth live, as nature's pages open spread, by erudite or fools are read. To this one seems the world a den, while that a paradise in it doth ken. In the same place 'tis lore preacquisite, the wise man's store, gives off a value rich and full, to that sprung from a sense so dull, it does not half appreciate upon that which it doth dilate. Dilatory, dull, absorbing, rapt, in the sort of a kind of a something mapped. While struggling reasons roam away, nor will in such dull fetters stay, but leaves the author out of himself, to make his fame or gain his pelf. If so, he may or can, but to the common mind, the meanings thus let's find. For idle pastimes hither led, fays, gnomes, and elves, and such like fled. To fix some dubious point to fairies only, known to exist, or to the lonely, thoughtful man recluse, of power, a potent spell to lose, which binds the better slave to worse swindles soul, body, goods, and purse, to unlock the secret cells of dark abyss. The power which never doth its victims miss, but may engorge when truth appears, when fail or guns or swords or spears. For some such end we may suppose they've met since day hath made its close. Night's noon time haply extra bright, by fairy power made all so light. Doubtful if night or day might reign, to certain be in mind revolve again, and say that common nature is not true. Precisely to what fairy opes the view? Come a caw for the effect, if you should doubt. If you've not been there, perhaps you mount. Make a fresh bend, will now advance. These folks displayed as in a trance have not the dexter object here, but the same might be sinister, for saintly doubtless it is rare to call a goblin elf the lair. He loves, or anything or sprite, that in the name of fairy doth delight, or even the land itself, laden with unimpossible wealth. To the mutton, says Monsieur Crapaud, this meat unto the patriarch owed, say its conclave, and here to shew his triple crown of subtle might, weird in its form and shining bright. An arch-magician, whose large little club of some hard heavy wood is but a stub, and might be loaded in its larger butt, forced to add when to use 'tis put. But even without no fairy skull, resist it might, however thick or dull. A little bit of wood, just a mere twig, for which a plodding mortal less than a fig cares, but to an elf it has a power as fatal as the upas. If on a sudden it descends on fairy scones, its revel ends, and then, you know, poor little fart, unto another private realm he will depart. Don't want to hurt poor little fairies. Appeals the rogue into the powers that be. The arch-fiend sees no dodge illicit, bout yonker caught is not explicit. Or he might say, don't let me catch you here again, or perhaps you'll meet with far too much sharp pain and stunning effects the same to follow, which will not leave you time to halloa. Beneath his widespread crown he casts a glance adown, deem vistas of the pregnant coming bustle, to note if there is aught to stay or hustle. The incident peculiar here, inciting edge, incising clear, or so to do. His right hand raised seems to declare, except I tell you when, strike if you dare. For all the powers of skill or chance, fairies can be used before my glance, and bear. 'Tis so, no doubt, but even almighty power suffers defeat each day and every hour, as unforeseen some little trifling thing cheats of a stave another song we sing. His glance means likely too, if to other is not much ado. He with one blow another turn will serve, if from the aim's intent it doth not swerve. Left to its time and how to do, to split for mob perchance a chariot anew. 'Tis all the skull there is for such a deed, happening in fairy for fairy's need. See, 'tis fey woodman holds aloft the axe, whose double-edged virtue now they tax, to do it single and make single double, teatly and neatly, equal without trouble. 'Tis not yet done, yet there he stands. Try if he'll do it for your own commands. He knows the axe to use on fairy trees, and fairy common sense embodies if you please. If that your fancy, you constrain so far, as to suppose the same, and yet no more. Your mental method and decorum were all things shew them quasi-coram. He clothed in leather note from top to toe, all of one color you may mark also. The color of his money, you might say, good or bad adding, lack a day. How can I tell? Splitting is either good or bad, for not so the same terms are had. And that's his money, so to speak, merely though 'tis about a freak. As to the color, this will add, 'tis warm enough for fairy mad. But fairy leather comes from victims small, though, if they're not cattle fed in field or stall, I know not, or bats' wings dyed to suit the taste. But to the next one let us haste. The ostler from the fairy inn, knowing his air, the curate of the trim, hands to his knees and body bent. On the nuts so tiny is all intent, with well-spurred heel can ride amain. Stirrup or saddle seeks not to maintain. His seat, the which so well he knows, secure the menage that around him grows. That is a look of mastery, as 'twere to say, there is no dotch to me doth lay. Concealed where asses, dogs, or warmint be, I am a doctor veterinary. They call me night or morn as to eve. Tom? Price? I know full well of beasts, and in a trice. Your servant, sir, your ass I'll groom, and shew you to the fairy inn's best room. What are you at there? Steady ho! Do you think his gaze will help you the blow? Next a dwarf monk with shaven crown on the bank's brink hath cast adown his wide-sleeved arms and rests his chin. Partly his face his hands conceal, I put him in. For why? Because I may reply. Monk's specific mount, they say on high. But as historians do over, about their manners some demur, checks the free access unto heaven, and then, of that to speak with leaven, of circumspection unto another region they adhere, not holding onto it very tight, I fear. And where there is but little wine or beer, far wandering habits, also 'tis well known, led the same blades about from town to town, and this with inns and sotlers too, familiarly acquainted grew. Says he's rogue, and to the next, 'tis Varmas ploughman claims the text. He has a twinkle in his eye, bespeaks good humor, you'll descry, of cows and sheeps of crops can talk. Quite wonderful, and see him walk, with lounging stride across the fields, just turned afresh to raise the crop that yields. Ample return for all his labor, that wants no sound of pipe and tabor. His doubtful speech he hath addressed, to Wagoner will beside him lest. The sage remark quite lost should be, but how indifferent Will is. See? Come hither, woe is more to him than such a speculative whim. Above clodhoppers sits, and like the sod, he's brown in color, also he's well shod. A satyr's head has buckles in his shoes, nurses one foot upon his knee, and amuse with him. Yourself he's modern fay, so gives his garb, and decent sylvan he, is not stark naked, and so proud might be. A foot, and not a hoof to own, but can he put a hat upon his crown? His horns forbid. Say that it slid from off his pate and fell. Where? He nor I can tell. There let it lie. The politician next, with senatorial pipe, for argument or his opinion ripe. A first chop Englishman at that sort of chaff. To hear him talk, Lord, how 'twould make you laugh. For fairy politics differ so very wide. From human government's complete divide, he's pondering matters now, as if his vote ought to be given ere 'tis smote. The nut, I mean, next him observe one clad in green, an unknown character, some fairy dandy, making a break as sweet as candy. To fairy nymph like him so quaint, they are poor ones clearly in a taint. The present case, because 'tis queer, and like themselves, yet no small beer. They deem of their own station, behind them elves quite wide awake, notes of the doings here to take, and to their fellows by and by tell all without a word of a lie. Below a pedagogue appears, a critic up to sneers and jeers, and by his fawn-like ears he's wild, untamed himself, each fairy child. He tames with many a look severe, but if his glance is there or here, 'tis hard to say, he squints to note. You may, but he'll not meddle with a work so sharp, waits in suspense and doth not carp. His business is to teach to do. Do it himself? Oh no, 'tis you. Next come two wenches rather smart, from lady chamber where each art of fairy luxury they the care at madam's need can well prepare. This holds a mirror in her hand so tiny, a magic surface polished bright and shiny, while that a broom to sweep away the fairy rubbish lack-a-day holds in her left hand. On her right a favorite hawk moth doth alight. They've got good legs and feet so small, Bavaria, Flanders, Germany, and all can shew no more fantastic limb. Critics are severe, 'tis therefore that I beg you'll not inform that fay that under the leg of which one of those maids behind his back a satyr peeps at what? It doth not lack an explanation. At such a book, his right to look, I care not to dispute. Such secrets surely some must know. All are not saints on earth below. Or if they are, they know the same, or are shut out from nature's game, banished from nature's book of life, because some angel in the strife had got the worser fate, and they close their eyes that gate, by which reminders enter, and in a paradise of fools contented live. Fays also are not saints, so I must believe that this and similar frolics they achieve. The truth is not for all, you'll say, but that eternal seal it bear, one might say nay. Who are the victims of that cruel fate? False secrecy, that sometimes 'tis too late to find? Lost to their race, for every they in other spheres can understand the light of day. Next Lubin bending over his flame, Chloe and Phyllis hard to tame, with wooden sabots round about shall clatter, churn fairy butter or some such matter, as to the dairy doth belong, whiling and charming time with song. Their rustic lovers rustic in manner, and Lubin happen is as a fairy tanner. Tan woodman's leather coat and cap, his leggings, all their boots mayhap. Except his sweethearts, they are of wood. He'd do them too to oblige her if he could. They are curious in his business, you see, plainly. See also next below two dwarfs, ungainly. No, for the sake of rhyme it fits so well, we'll write it down, and after all, that 'tis deformity approaches near, the truth about this couple is here. A fairy conjurer he who knows a trick or two at cards, and in the nick of time can will deceive. Thus of your reason you take leave. Then 'tis that he will do the clever dodge which puzzles many a clownish Varma Hodge. You think perhaps you don't know so. The prayer book so affirms I know. Just now he offers out to let. Twill or twill not be surely split. Some odds perhaps will give. What fairy corn is, true as I live, I can't inform, nor if they betted. And if they did, the profits netted. The spider near his web hath left, drops down upon them from some cleft, where he spread his wide snare from game, one that detains yet doth not maim. Perhaps he's an offer when they have done, to supply with gossamer wells all, everyone. A master weaver he in whose employ the lesser spinners may enjoy profits and learn to make account of those who wish aloft to mount, and sail away upon the wind, from Europe perhaps to furthest end. They've only wine to ask for, 'tis the weather, that in this case saves the expense of leather, and pilgrimages. Let's make one to the opposite side, that is, objection, if you've none. Two braves we see, in gallantry, who by their wits can live, can sing or play, fight, run away, or entertainment give. Your ferryman upon the town, that can clean out a swell or clown, and if there's need can let you down a peg or two, so high they fly, hawking while talking all my eye, next to the patriarch's crown attend, and mark the motes that there descend. Dancing and singing there they go, with their falal, the ra, and huey ho. The dress is Spanish, 'tis in use at present time if I abuse not memory of the source, from which I borrowed them of course. Call cottagers, no bloods are these, as on tight rope they to please. I represented when in the play one is dressed like the Duvernay. Balancing these on the other side, Queen Mab in car of state doth ride. Some Atamis the poet says did draw, a gnat gives to them coachman's law. I never saw the famed Queen Mab, or might, had it been so contributed delight. The Atamis are, no doubt, a dubious theme, like tiny female centaurs here do seem. Half beast and half a woman yoked are, with wings to soar away in regions far. Under the coachman standing nigh, two little pages you may spy. Cupid and Psyche they enact, fairies no doubt possesses the tact to imitate like mortal players. I know not if at theaters or fairs it needs must be so. Fairies, 'tis said, shun all display, and most affect the pale moon's ray. Soul's potent ray soon drives them off. He'd instant find whereat to spurn and scoff. Just so it was with folk in olden time, whose practices were held to be a crime. They fled the powers that held despotic sway. Poor little fairies, why not also they? Fancy this pair aught else 'twill do, but male and female they are plain to view. Next to the queen you here behind may count some strapping fairy footmen mount, and guard Kemen, no doubt they will do serve, tiny in size but lusty in the nerve, as every footman should be, above an attitude of fondest love. King Oberon and his queen approve to sport, else why should they repair to this sequestered spot the same to share? Merely perhaps to note the way things went, and how many chops were useless made anent. Pulling of straws out from a stack of wheat is for a pastime, not more meat. And such the old lady in the scarlet cloak might none be fancying true, no joke. Is it true for me or even you? True if you cannot, this is true. Her nose and chin will never crack, the monster nuts and many a whack. From club or shining axe will want, ere the chance fatal lights apont. Above the harridan some whose names serve schoolboys turned when at their games, they of the future calling prophecy, with boisterous laugh and ecstasy of childish mirth, nor want they, perhaps, a forced imposed belief. In soldier and sailor, tinker or tailor, plowboy, apothecary, thief, counting their buttons down the vest, a name to each, the last doth rest. The faded one, soon from the thoughts 'tis laid aside, and fairy prophecy forgot. Here let me say my let of this same lot. The ragged soldier sure is mad, made so by wounds, debauch, and glad. But hard-earned victory being fey, I've not the history. I made it so, but not from spite, aside and fairy prophecy forgot. Here let me say my name of this same lot. The ragged soldier sure is mad, made so by wounds, debauch, and glad. But hard-earned victory being fey, I've not the history. I made it so, but not from spite, else he'd find reason to requite. But ragamuffins to enlist, he's a brave spirit to assist. Knows when he does he'll be commander, the chief one or a salamander. A real fire-eater like the sun, by his own bravery surely won. The sailor keeps a pleasure yacht, has naught to do but live on what the smiling elements that never frown freely disclose as up and down. For pleasure merely roam about the fleets of vessels of which he'll take entire command for the nation's sake. Nor cares he where to move or swim, till death commands to douse the glim. Some other oceans then he'll try, rolling eternal in the sky. The tinker next, with borrowed trig, knows every wandering gypsy rig. Where does he lodge? 'Tis hard to say, whether a house or stack of hay. Serves the poor outcast for his rest. He's but, however, for many a jest. Lives in a world of neither pose, mysterious obscure, your senses lows, or cast aside as nothing's worth, nor length it has, nor breadth or girth. Just now he marks the filbert big script of its natural russet wig. How would he here his skill to prove? He'd grind it perhaps, not so by Jove. Clumsily skillful though he be, he knows too much for that did he see. Around the fairy villages he'll stray, knives, scissors to grind might ball each day. Knows well the tailor regular grinds his shears. Ah, that's a tailor brave that knows no fears. 9 fairy tailors would not make a man, though they might queer him, you know well they can. But this one seems disposed to queer, the plowboy that is standing to him near. Shoes him a coat neat made and very strong. 'Twould last the lad his fairy lifetime long. But while he doubts the same to buy, the thief his craft on him doth try. Loosens his handkerchief so gay, too artful he to snatch away. The doctor in his thoughts reserved, the trick below hath not observed. But with his soundling pestle beats the drugs that he to fairy meets. His mortar would not hold the nut, but holds enough for fairy gut. A nostrum, or panacea, at any price, we'll say not dear. Next to the soldier on his right, a dragonfly exerts his skill and might. Sounds the long notes, long the long tube that wind. and in the fairy hollows echoes find. To assist this gaudy, long-legged trumpeter, a tattered malleon and a junketer, holiday folk that tends upon, like a postilion if you con. Each blows his brazen tube no doubt in tune, with dragonfly that rests his leg aboon. The juding stone on which they sit, expecting company that soon will fit, slanting along the lunar ray, like boys and girls come out to play. Allow behind these last named two, an elfin takes a peeping view, not at the nuts, but the spectator, happen to mark, if arbitrator. He in his remarkable fudge, or humbug gives the fatal nudge. Peeper is wildest of the crew, cares naught for them, nor I of you. You from his cap with me perchance agree, of the Chinese small foot society. He's a small member, but if Confucius sent him, now I can't remember. Turn to the patriarch and behold, long pendants from his crown are rolled, and winding figures circle around the grass and such upon the mound. They represent vagary wild and mental aberration styled, now unto nature clinging close, now wildly out away they toss, like a cyclone uncontrolled, sweeping around with chance-born fold. Unto the picture brings a grace, which else was wanting to its face, but tied at length unto a stem, shoes or should do finitum rem. The size the nuts do here display, forgive nor make me forfeit pay, having the benefit of doubt of what the fairies grow without the reach of human ken or will, and needs not now that I instill into your mind what here I've said from fancy's wing, a sense supporting of my need. You may deny, say, no such thing. 'Tis all wrong every bit indeed. Well, to your judgment I must bow, freely its exercise allow. You perhaps to such are more inured, your notions may be more endured, but whether it be or be not so, you can afford to let it go. For naught as nothing it explains, and nothing from nothing, nothing gains. By painter Richard Dadd, January 1865.